Have we started recording?
Yep.
Okay, welcome. My name's Jacqueline Gist. I want to welcome you to our Careers in Nonprofits panel discussion. You may come and see me at any time. This is my email address. You can make appointments with me or another counselor and talk about your interest in nonprofits and how to find internships and jobs. Our panelists today include Abby Manwood, who is our recruiter here at UCS with the UCS Peace Corps, Joanna Martinez, who is a fellow with Z. Smith Reynolds, and she'll tell you all about that and what that means. Anna Jensen, who is program director and an alum here with Student Action with Farm Workers, and Elizabeth Brewington, who is an alum and board member of the Johnson Service Corps. I'm going to put all of this information in the chat, or my friend Cara is going to put all this information in the chat so you can see it. Before we get started, I want to make sure that you're aware of other resources to help you explore your interest in nonprofit organizations and to help you find jobs and internships in nonprofits. These include, if none of you have ever heard of it before, Idealist.org. Idealist is a nonprofit site for jobs and internships and volunteer opportunities. It's also a really great way to find organizations that you might be interested in all over the world. So it's a great resource for that. I'm a real believer in student organizations and in getting experience while you are a student through campus organizations. Doesn't only have to be through internships. And when it comes to nonprofits, one of the best is our Campus Y. The Campus Y has many different committees that work with a whole range of issues, from housing and food insecurity to healthcare to people with disabilities to working with to tutoring programs with children. So I encourage you to check out the Campus Y to get some on-campus experience. For those of you that haven't heard of it, Apple's Service Learning is a wonderful resource. Apple's is a program that connects experience with your coursework. So they place you with an agency that does work, nonprofit work, that's connected with the course. It's a great program. They also have summer, fall, and spring internships that you might want to check out. So please check out Apple's. And if you're looking for volunteer opportunities, the Triangle United Way or the United Way in your hometown will tell you how to find volunteer opportunities. So campus involvement and volunteer opportunities and internships are all the way that we build experience and skills that will allow you to pursue a career in nonprofits. So with that, when we finish this today, we're going to ask you all to please take a minute and complete an evaluation. The evaluation form will also be in the chat. So let's get started. I'm so excited to have everybody here. We're going to ask each of our panelists to take a couple minutes and introduce themselves, talk about their work and their career path, and we'll start with that. So let's just start randomly, and I'm going to start with Anna. You please just take a couple minutes and tell us about yourself.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me. My name's Anna Jensen. I studied Spanish and English literature when I was an undergrad at UNC, and most of my work with nonprofits has been through the Spanish side of that. So I currently work as a program director at Student Action with Farm Workers, and it's a nonprofit in Durham that brings students and farm workers together to improve farm worker lives. So we work with students and organizations across the country, but with a focus on the Southeast and mostly North and South Carolina. And I can talk more about our summer internships later, but most of my work focuses on running our summer internship program. So when I was an undergraduate at UNC, I interned with Student Action with Farm Workers, the organization where I now work. And that was my first exposure to both nonprofit organizations and to agriculture and farm workers in North Carolina. And I spent the summer doing outreach with workers and talking to them about pesticides and organizing events and participating in popular theater. And I decided after that I wanted to do more of that work, both with farm workers and with nonprofits, because I loved the way that I got to do just a variety of things over the summer, which I think happens in a lot of nonprofit organizations. You can wear many hats, you can do a bunch of different things. So I applied to be an outreach worker with an organization, a nonprofit organization in Eastern North Carolina that connected farm workers with medical care. And I did that for 2 years. It was a lot of driving to rural areas and talking to farm workers after work. And that organization was working to fill the gaps between public services and make them more accessible to vulnerable populations, which is something that a lot of nonprofits do. And I returned to school after 2 years because I was looking for a balance, sort of a chance to take a step back from direct service work and look at the bigger picture and think about, how we were doing things and what were other ways to accomplish the things we wanted to accomplish. So I studied community development for my master's degree. I did research with grape workers in California's Napa Valley, worked on a heat stress study. And then when I finished, I returned to North Carolina and worked as a community organizer for a year with an environmental nonprofit before I was offered a position as a director of the Farm Workers Project, where I had been an outreach worker. And I was there for a little over 7 years, and I joined SAF, again, Student Action with Farm Workers, in March of this year, which sort of feels like coming home and coming full circle. And the program director position is a really nice balance for me between the direct service work, which was often, hard to look at the bigger picture, and the executive director, which was sometimes a little bit too much of a 10,000-foot view. So this is a nice balance between both of those things. So that's sort of my career path. And I sort of landed back where I started, but in a really great way. I'm looking forward to talking more with y'all.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. I've always been a big admirer for many years. Students with Action with Farm Workers was here when I first started. So I've known of you for a long time. Joanna, can you tell us about yourself and what you do in your career path?
Yeah, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Joanna. I graduated from North Carolina A&T State University back in 2020, so not too long ago. And I was introduced to nonprofit work and just organizations when I was 13, and I've actively been involved in this one nonprofit called Triangle Bike Works that helps put youth of color into cycling. But currently I work in philanthropy with the Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation, and I can talk more about it later, but just a quick introduction. That's what I studied, and born and raised in Chapel Hill.
Thank you. Thank you. Elizabeth, tell us about yourself and the work you do and your path.
Good morning, y'all. My name is Elizabeth Brewington. I grew up in Greensboro, and I actually went to Ohio for college, where I was a sociology and religious studies double major. In December of my senior year, I really had no clue what I wanted to do, what career options, anything. I was just very focused on finishing my senior thesis. And I came home for winter break, and my high school youth leader was like, I think you should think about Johnson Service Corps. You get a year to work at a nonprofit, but also think critically about what you want your career path to be. You'll get excellent skills, but you've got time to figure out where you want to go. So thankfully I listened to her. And after I graduated, did a year with Johnson Service Corps from 2017 to 2018. While I was there, I got to live in Durham with my other fellow Corps members. We all were working at different nonprofits, which was really great for me to know what different opportunities there were. And then I was working at what is now called the Durham Children's Initiative. So I got to work on educational programming for 3rd to 5th graders and really learn a lot about planning and implementing and putting on events and educational programming for kids. After that year of service was done, I got hired by the North Carolina Council of Churches, and I now work with churches around the overdose crisis and educating them on ways they can get involved in the harm reduction movement. So no longer working with kids, but still doing a lot of the same educational programming and event planning that I learned during my year of service. So that's me.
Thank you, and thank you for the work you do. Abby, tell us about you.
Hi, my name is Abby. I grew up in Wyoming and then went to Duke for undergrad. I graduated in 2019, and then I joined the Peace Corps directly out of graduation. So I served in Guatemala from 2019, September 2019 to March of 2020. And in March of 2020, Peace Corps, for the first time in their history, did a global evacuation of all volunteers. So I was evacuated back to the States. And then I worked for a couple of years just in Wyoming and in and around Durham, and then decided to apply to grad school. So now I'm a grad student at UNC doing my master's in library sciences. And I also work on campus as the UNC Peace Corps recruiter. So I'm available on campus 3 days a week with office hours to talk with students about whether or not they want to join the Peace Corps, and just available as a resource for students to talk through potential career paths and what the Peace Corps service could look like.
Thank you, Abby. Thank all of you.
Definitely.
To take a little time and ask some individual questions now. Begin with Elizabeth. How do 1 and 2 year service experiences prepare people for careers? And
Yeah.
could you tell us if you know of any other service programs in addition to the Johnson?
Yeah. So I think service year programs provide a lot of different experiences for people. You could work at a variety of different nonprofits. Also, I apologize for my dog in the background. But you get a lot of different work experiences. You get to see the different sections of the nonprofit. I was able to learn about grant making. I was able to work on event evaluations. Like Anna mentioned, a lot of nonprofits, you wear a bunch of hats. And so when you're doing a year of service, you kind of get to try on all those hats and see which is the best fit for you. In terms of what other service experiences are out there, there's a website called the Service Year Alliance in North Carolina that goes over all the different service year options. So there's AmeriCorps. Johnson Service Corps is a part of the Episcopal Service Corps. So there are different programs in other states that are very similar to Johnson Service Corps. They're pretty much any of the different religious denominations have their, sorry about that.
We don't care.
Apparently he's very needy today. But a bunch of the other different religious denominations like the Lutheran Service Corps, the Jesuit Service Corps, all have their own different opportunities. So if you are of a different spiritual tradition and you want to explore that option, you're welcome to. I will say, even though the Johnson Service Corps is a part of the Episcopal Service Corps, you do not have to be Episcopalian or of a particular faith to be a part of the Johnson Service Corps. You just have to be open to identifying and exploring spiritual components in your life. So does that help any?
Yes. There's also Vista and AmeriCorps,
Yes.
which offer a wide range of 1 and 2 year service opportunities.
And I also had several friends do City Year as well as a service opportunity. So there's lots of different, depending on what area or what potential job you're interested in.
Yes, and Idealist, which we'll have up in the chat, you can learn more about those through idealist.org. So thank you, Elizabeth. Let's see now. Let's see, Anna. This is a question a lot of people get. What's a community organizer do?
That is a great question. So basically, in a nutshell, community organizer is getting interested groups of people together to take action on an issue. And that can be really specific or really tight. Like you might have a specific idea of what that action is, like a legislative campaign. So when I worked at an environmental nonprofit, we would sometimes do legislative work. So we knew we wanted to get people to take action on a bill that was moving forward or that, we wanted to move forward. And sometimes it's looser, like it's issue-based or place-based. So some of my organizing as a community organizer was with farm workers, and we wanted to get farm workers together to talk about pesticides and alternatives to pesticides and pesticide safety. And we didn't know exactly what the action was going to be, or even what farm workers wanted to do about pesticides. We just wanted to organize farm workers so they could talk about this issue and then figure out together what action they wanted to take. So sometimes it's a lot looser, and you don't, have a specific goal in mind. And sometimes, organizations have a specific campaign or a specific goal and are looking for ways to get more people involved. And so a lot of my work would be, going to other events with partner organizations where interested people might be. So trying to meet more people who could get involved or who might potentially have an interest in whatever we were working on, but weren't connected yet. And just finding ways to talk to people about, the issue that we were. So sometimes I would organize events to get people together. We try to find a lot of different ways to get people to plug in. So sometimes it was, in-person events, and sometimes it was like giving people options of ways to get involved. Like you can sign a petition, or you can write a letter, you can come to this event and stay connected. And a lot of it was also staying connected with the people that we met through these things, so that when other things came up in the future, we knew, we had sort of a database of people to reach out to and to get involved, and knew people's experiences and interests, so that we could work together on, future campaigns and work that we did.
Thank you. I think a lot of people don't understand that. Bit of trivia, Barack Obama's first job was as a community organizer. So it can lead to great places. Yes.
And I think a lot of his first campaign for office was really community organizing based, used a lot of those principles of getting out and talking directly to a lot of people. So
it is one of the key ways to create change. I think people aren't necessarily aware of it. Change just doesn't happen. Community organizers help make it happen. So thank you for being part of that tradition. Joanna, what did you do? How did your major and your experience in college as an undergrad prepare you for what you're doing now?
Thank you. I really appreciate this question. As I mentioned earlier, I studied history. I got my Bachelor's of Arts in History. And originally, I planned to go into law once I graduated for undergrad. And so I felt like a history degree would prepare me for that, to really learn how to write, how to complete research, and also to be active in a lot of passions and movements that I feel relatable throughout history or in the current movements. And throughout my undergrad experience, and I'll mention some opportunities that came about, really changed my career path and how I ended up now with the Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation. But one opportunity that history provided me, just really being active and learning how to write and learning my interest, I was able to complete the Public Policy and International Affairs Junior Summer Institute, which ties into history, but now I just learned how to apply it to data and how I can see it with a policy lens, how I can see history with a policy lens. And after that, another opportunity, I was a recent recipient of a Fulbright grant for 2021 and 2022. And so I just got back in July, and I was placed in Oaxaca, and I was doing the English teaching grant, but that still tied into a lot of policy work, a lot of history. I had to immerse myself in the community, really take account of my role as a Fulbrighter in that community. And so I feel like everything ties into my interest. And thankfully with the Fulbright grant, you can also do a side project. So I was able to look up education policies. And when I reached my second placement, so during my grant, I was in 2 different placements. And then I did a cultural project. And so I enrolled in Indigenous dancing of Oaxaca. And so that was really neat, which I feel like ties back into history, into policy, and community work, because my dance class was from the ages of 5 to 50. And so it was a really neat experience. But how I ended up now with the Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation, it's philanthropy work, but with philanthropy, you're giving back to nonprofits. So it's really connected. This field is really connected and tied together. And so I feel like history, and also being born and raised in North Carolina, and this is a North Carolina-based foundation, I feel like all of that tied together, and history opened a lot of doors for me. But you have to really put yourself out there, because the school that I attended is a very STEM focused school. And so when I arrived there, I was like, ooh, what am I doing studying history? Like, there's not a lot of opportunities for me, but you really have to put yourself out there and look at all your interests and see what you can find with what you're studying. Because even though you might not necessarily fit the requirements or what they're looking for, you should still apply, because it could still apply to you and the work that you do outside of just like a history title. So I hope that answers your question, and I'm
It
happy to add
does.
more.
It does, and I think you should go be a spokeswoman for the history department. That would be great. Abby, thanks again for being here. What undergraduate organizations or extracurriculars were you involved in when you were an undergrad, and how did that play into like what you ended up doing?
Yeah. So the organization I was most involved in my undergrad was a pre-orientation program. So I think Duke has now expanded these programs, so they look a little different than when I was a student. But what I did was I was a part of Project Wild, which took incoming freshmen out on backpacking trips. So we would take a big group of incoming freshmen on a 2-week backpacking trip in Pisgah National Forest. So it was 2 weeks before they began their orientation on Duke's campus. And it was a chance to build community and experience some of North Carolina's natural world before you were thrown into life as an undergraduate student. So I participated in that for the first couple of years as a staffer. So I was one of the folks that would take a smaller group out on the trips. And then later I became one of the student directors. So I was organizing the logistics of the trip for everyone. So that was the undergraduate organization that I was the most involved with on campus. And then I also served as the social chair of one of my living groups. So Duke has these living groups of folks that live together, and I was in charge of, fostering community in that way. And I think the way that both of those apply to what I ended up doing with the Peace Corps is they were really focused on that idea of like building community and building a sense of belonging, especially I know for a lot of undergrads, when they first get on campus, it is just such a huge change and such a huge transition period, and you lose a lot of your built-in support network that you have in your high school. So getting a chance to learn the ways to build community and sense of belonging really helped me in my work with the Peace Corps, and is now really helping me in my grad student work and my work as a recruiter. But that idea of how do we what is it that brings people together and makes people want to stay together and support each other?
That experience is one of the reasons that we hired her to be our Peace Corps recruiter. So thanks for that, Abby.
Yeah.
Second questions. Elizabeth, what were your career goals in college, and how, if any, have they changed?
I went through many different career goals in college, and they have changed a lot. I originally thought I wanted to do a dual law and divinity degree my freshman year of college. And then that changed to maybe I just want to be a youth pastor. And then it changed to I don't want to go to divinity school. I don't know what I want to do. And now I view kind of my career goals as I want to keep working and pushing religious institutions to be the best they can be. And so currently that's through this nonprofit, the North Carolina Council of Churches, but maybe one day I would like to get a PhD, but to continue that idea. All of that to say is I have never really had a clear path and stuck to it. I've enjoyed the twists and turns. And so maybe in 5 years, if you have me back, this will have completely changed. But I think one of the things that my time with Johnson Service Corps really taught me is to enjoy that kind of discernment process and looking through and figuring out what different skills and environments I like to be in.
Thank you. I tell students all the time, and it's good to have living proof, that our career goals change and evolve as we grow as individuals. And that you don't need to say, oh, if I pick something now, that's what I'm going to be doing when I'm Jackie's age, you know?
Oh,
That it's a matter of developing this portfolio.
yeah, when I was in 6th grade, if you had asked me, I would have said costume designer on Broadway. When I was in high school, I would have said attorney because that's all I knew. I didn't know that sociology was a thing. And then I got to college and that was like what grabbed me. I didn't know the organization I work for now even existed. I didn't know Johnson Service Corps existed. So there's so many opportunities out there that we're not really told about as we grow up, and it's fun to uncover and discover what we can learn and take from each of them.
Exactly. Speaking of what we can discover and what we do, Anna, what skills does it take and experience to lead a nonprofit organization? Students often tell me they want to be a nonprofit exec. What's it take to do that?
That is a really great question. And I think it varies a lot because there's a lot of variety in nonprofit organizations. You know, really small nonprofits are really different than larger ones like, you know, the Girl Scouts of America or whatever. So I was the director of a small nonprofit. It was fairly small when I got there. There were 5 employees. And what they were looking for when I was offered that job was somebody who really had who really understood the issues that the nonprofit worked on and had a previous connection to the community and to the work, and had supervisory experience and a vision for stabilizing and growing the organization because they had been through a lot of transitions. And so they wanted someone who was really familiar and knew the area and had sort of a vision for how we could move forward and grow and be stable. But I think a lot of times what people look for is it's a variety of skills. It's it's good for folks who are generalists. So you don't have to necessarily have a specialization, I think, in a lot of things. There's, you know, fundraising is something that folks often look for. So that's both grant writing and fundraising, individual fundraising. The grant management. So, you know, can you write reports for grants? Can you keep track of all of the things that you're supposed to be doing and your goals? Can you evaluate, you know, the work that you've done? The financial management, I don't think you need to be an accountant, but I think folks sometimes like to see some evidence that you can manage a budget or that you can look at all the different pieces of that financial part and know how to stay within a budget or how to write a budget or project your expenses for, you know, the next years. And then I think good people skills are really important. You know, can you represent the organization well? Nonprofit leaders have to talk to a bunch of different people. You have to talk to, you know, you have to be able to supervise and interact with and work well with all of the folks in your organization. You need to be able to talk to the public. You have to be able to talk to donors. You have to be able to talk to the community that you're working with, whatever that looks like. So it's really important to be able to, you know, address a bunch of different audiences and get along well and work well with a lot of different folks. And then I think increasingly and really encouragingly, nonprofits are starting to take seriously the idea that the most affected people should be in charge, not just informing the decisions, but actually in charge of the organization. So lived experience should matter more than it often does, but I think it really is starting to be something that groups look for. So my current organization, Student Action with Farm Workers, just hired a new executive director in June. And we work with students from farm worker families. So the hiring committee was really looking for someone who had been a farm worker student and had been a previous participant in our programs. And so the executive director that we hired came from a farm worker family, grew up with her family doing farm work and moving around, and had been through our work. So she knew our work really well and knew the issues, and they really wanted someone in charge and leading the organization who had lived through the issues that we work on. So I think that lived experience is starting to really matter, and all the things that you do and the things that make up your life, folks are starting to take that into account more than like degrees, and which can still be important, and you can learn things a lot of different ways. But I think that is also something that's becoming more prevalent, which is really encouraging and really exciting too.
That is, I've seen that happening too, that it's including in some housing programs. and in some food insecurity programs. It's not just having what we used to call consumers on the board of directors. It's putting former consumers in a position where they can be guiding decisions, and that's a great change in organizations. Thank you, Anna. Joanna, what's a foundation? What do they do? And what different kinds of jobs are in foundations?
Thank you. So currently, the Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation has been around for more than 80 years, giving back to the state of North Carolina. Foundations work in philanthropy, and that is providing back to the community any way that they can. And so Z. Smith Reynolds, the foundation, is based in Winston-Salem, and Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation only provides grants in North Carolina. We do not provide out of the state. And so we really focus on helping the state of North Carolina in any type of way. And so foundations really immerse themselves in the whole state. So we do a lot of site visits to get to know our grantees. It isn't just like oh, here's a grant and no, and you go on about your day. That's not how it is. Z. Smith Reynolds really has a big focus on creating that bond and to create a long-term ecosystem of North Carolina. And really, we look at it on a daily basis, like what is the ecosystem in North Carolina? What is our goal? What do we want to help? What type of groups do we want to give back to? Really pushing for different voices, different types of nonprofits as well. And so some opportunities that are within, I'll talk about Z. Smith Reynolds specifically because each foundation is very different. Some are very small. Z. Smith Reynolds is known to be one of the larger ones of North Carolina. But I'll talk about 2 opportunities that we have at Z. Smith Reynolds. We currently have the fellowship, which is what I'm doing for 2 years here at Z. Smith Reynolds. And we're currently accepting applications. So if this is an interest of yours, I'd highly suggest that you apply. But as a fellow, you serve as like a junior program officer. So you're involved in everything. You do site visits, you create memos, and you learn the in and out of what it means to work with nonprofits throughout North Carolina. And so I think that's very neat. And you can also narrow in on a focus. So we have different portfolios, and for example, some is democracy, environmentalism, education. And so if you have a focus in that, you can work with more of those organizations that we currently provide grants for. And the other opportunity that we have is the nonprofit internship program. And the application hasn't launched quite yet. It will be shortly. But that is for Pell Grant eligible college students, and they can complete a paid summer internship program, and they can work with nonprofits across North Carolina. And so I've been a part of one event for that because I just joined recently in July with the Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation. But the impact that I saw at the closing ceremony was really impactful. So working with nonprofits, and I'm glad that this panel is being held because a lot of these students who complete this internship program didn't know about careers or didn't know about different nonprofits throughout North Carolina. And so I'm really happy that Z. Smith Reynolds partners with other foundations to create this internship program for Pell Grant eligible college students. And so I'm happy to talk more if someone has specific questions about it. And I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to stress one other thing, and that is that foundations hire a wide range of professionals.
Yes.
They need people who can do marketing. They need people who can do human resources. They need people who can do development and accounting. Just any kind of job that you would normally think of as a business job, you're going to find that in foundations and in other nonprofits as well. So I love the opportunities Z. Smith gives to all of our students. There are also jobs for students that maybe aren't as focused on the social change, social justice aspects, but want to be working for an organization that they believe in its values. There are jobs for people with backgrounds in finance as well as in community work. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and if I can add, real quick, with all those positions that you mentioned, you work as a team. And so everyone's involved in the same project. Everyone is tied together. And so I'm really glad that you mentioned that. Thank you.
Thank you. Abby, what's it like to work overseas? How's that different?
Yeah, so I think that it is, first of all, really dependent on where you are working abroad. So I can speak personally to my experience in Guatemala, but I do think that there are some things that tie, wherever you go abroad together, which is one of the things that I really feel like I learned from working abroad that has helped me throughout my experience post service is this idea of cultural humility and just recognizing that like your experience of the world is very individual, and there are so many people in the world that have had experiences that are drastically different from yours, and being able to just listen to what those are and understand, and I mean, you'll never be able to live those experiences, but just listening and trying to understand like what that is like, and that we are all and just like having that humility to take a step back and realize that like the American experience is not the only experience. And in America, I think there's this real sense that it is, at least my experience growing up. I felt very American centric. And so it was really useful to me to get out of that bubble and just to realize that like, there's a whole world, which maybe should have been obvious, but it wasn't. And I think that for many Americans, it's not. And so I think that that was really valuable and is something that likely would be true if you were serving in places abroad that are not Guatemala. And then in addition to that, there is also just the advantage of, getting to learn another language. That was something that has really helped me. It's just such a valuable skill and ability to connect with folks, especially because I was lucky enough to be in Guatemala and I was learning Spanish, and so many folks in North Carolina are Spanish speakers. And so being able to come back to the States and connect with populations that you would not have been able to previously because you didn't speak the language. So those are the ways, I think, some of the ways in which it really helped me. And then I also want to speak a little bit to like the difficulty of working abroad, which is that there is just that, like I was speaking about earlier with the transition into undergrad, there really is like that transition, that experience of like being in an area where you don't speak the language and you don't know anybody and you're just like put there. And so I think that also really helped me, gain a lot of resiliency and learn how to build community when I don't have those support systems. So I came to college and I did P Wild, and I immediately got a community through that. And having this experience of like, oh, I have to do this on my own and I have to find my people. And so just like going up to people and introducing myself, I think was a really valuable skill. And it was definitely difficult, but I think it was a valuable experience.
Beautifully put. Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
I'd like to give each of you a chance to tell us about opportunities in your own organization. Anna, you work directly with students. What opportunities are there for students or recent grads?
Yes, I do. And I'm so glad that you asked this question. We have a summer internship program. It sounds like it's a really long way away, but our applications are actually open for that program now. The application closes February 6th. So folks have a couple months to look through it and decide if it's something that you want to do. But basically what we do is we place 25 students each summer with organizations in North and South Carolina that work directly with farm workers. And there are a ton of different placements. So depending on, something you're interested in or things you think you might be interested in, we have placements with legal organizations, with organizations that do work, health work with clinics. We have community organizing positions with organizations. There are advocacy positions and lobbying. So there are just a variety of different things doing different work with farm workers in North and South Carolina. And so students apply and sort of rank their interests, and then they get placed with an organization and get support and training from Student Action with Farm Workers throughout the summer. So we have 3 trainings, an orientation, and you get to know folks in the cohort. So it's an experience of, getting to know a bunch of other people working in different areas, and it's students from across the Southeast and farm worker students from outside the Southeast. So we often have students who've worked in farm work from California and Idaho and Washington. So it's a really great chance to get to know a lot of different students from around the country who are interested in some of the same issues and working on some of the same things, and a great way to explore work in. Most of these organizations are nonprofit organizations. It's a great way to explore, an aspect of something that you think you might want to do. So those applications are open now, and there's a lot of information. It's a paid internship. It's 10 weeks in the summer. There's a lot more information on our website, which I can share either in the chat or to send out later. And I'm also happy to,
Please feel free to put it in the chat.
Yeah. And another opportunity that's less of a sort of job and more of a getting involved with farm workers is we do National Farm Worker Awareness Week each March. So if you're involved with a club that might want to put on an event, you should check out National Farm Worker Awareness Week. It's a fun opportunity to sort of showcase what farm workers do and to organize folks to learn more about farm workers. So that's another, and there are many grants available for clubs to do events. So.
Thank you. Thank you for the work you do. Elizabeth, can you tell us a little bit more about opportunities with the Service Corps and how people would get involved?
Yeah, thank you. So it sounds like Johnson Service Corps is on a very similar timeline with Anna's organization, Student Action Farm Workers. Our applications just opened for the Corps that will start in August of next year. We will keep recruiting those and through the summer of next year. So you have plenty of time to think about and apply. Once you apply, there's an interview process, and we are very similar to kind of applying for college in that we have a common application with all the other Episcopal Service Corps in the US. So you can apply to us, but you can also apply to 5 other ones if they're interested to you. When you interview, you get to learn more about the program and hear what kind of, sorry, the squeaker, what nonprofit partners we have. So we've had nonprofit partners like the Durham Children's Initiative, if you want to work with kids. We've also partnered with Code the Dream. So if you're interested in coding and teaching immigrants and refugees how to code, that's another one of our great partners. We also have worked with the Polly Murray Center, the Center for Responsible Lending, if you're more interested in policy, the Seymour Center, who was, oh crud. There's an organization in Chapel Hill that I'm blanking on their name right now. But we have a variety of different nonprofit partners in Chapel Hill and Durham that work on a variety of different issues. So if you're interested in kind of doing a year of service where your housing and your food is paid for and you get a monthly stipend, and that you will get an amazing experience at a nonprofit, visit our website and also check out the Episcopal Service Corps website for that common application. Yeah.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Joanna, can you tell us a little bit more about opportunities at Z. Smith and how students access them? And please feel free to put anything you like in the chat.
Yeah, thank you. So I provided the link to the Z. Smith Reynolds Fellowship because that is currently the only application that we have open right now. The nonprofit internship program will launch soon, but I'll give you a brief timeline about how the fellowship, the timeline for the fellowship. And so once applications are completed, the deadline for the application is January 11th. We will invite about 8 to 10 applicants for a first round of interviews. And then after that, about maybe 3 applicants will go on to a second interview. And there's only one fellowship position available. So in that second round, we will choose who will be the next fellow. And it is a 2-year fellowship with a salary, and which is subject to change, but currently it is at $44,000 and with a slight increase to $46,000 the second year. And so it is a 2-year fellowship, and the start date is July 1st. So we do ask that once you apply, to think about like if you will be able to complete the 2 years within the fellowship. And yeah, that's all the information I have for right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Abby, tell us a little bit more about how students can learn more about Peace Corps and apply.
Yeah, so if any UNC students have any questions about applications or anything, y'all can schedule office hours with me. I'm on campus 3 days a week available, and then remote a couple other. You can check, and I will post my office hours information in the chat. And then if you would like information about what applications are open now, I will post that as well. It's on the Peace Corps website. So right now there's a handful of positions open, and the applications are due on November 1st to depart in May. And then the next big application round is they're all open for applications due January 1st. And that would be to depart for service late summer. So those usually leave in August or September. So I applied for a January position and departed September 15th. So that's the usual break. We usually have deadlines in October, November, and January. So I will post all that information in the chat.
Thank you. I want to remind students that all this information is in the chat. I'd also like to ask, please, if my friend Cara could put our evaluation up in the chat. We really appreciate your feedback. I'd like to now open the floor to questions from students. Thank you, Cara. Any questions?
Yeah, so again, appreciate you guys having this for us. It's really nice thing you guys are doing. I'm really interested in, I'm from like rural East North Carolina, so I guess it's more skewed for Anna, but I mean, it's not really a question really. I mean, it's just, I mean, I really appreciate the outreach you're trying to do in those rural areas, because I mean, my great granddad, I mean, or my granddad, sorry, he was a farmer. And he helped my dad, you know, he kind of set the path for my dad to, you know, do something else. And then now I'm here at Chapel Hill, you know, my dad didn't go to college, my granddad didn't go to school, and, you know, here I am, you know, so I'm definitely a fan of what you guys do for us, and I appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that's awesome.
Anyone else have a question, or is there anything? We still have a little time. Are there any other careers in nonprofits that you're interested in that I bet between the 5 of us, we would have an answer for you? And don't forget those resources we posted earlier with Idealist and the United Way and the Y in Apples. Other questions? You know, I think one thing that people need to remember is that nonprofits does not mean non-pay. And there are real careers in the nonprofit sector that use a wide variety of skills, as Anna was talking about and Joanna was talking about, and I mentioned some. So it doesn't mean that you can't do well by doing good. And I stole that from someplace else. But if you're interested in learning more about careers in nonprofits or help finding internships and jobs in nonprofits, please don't hesitate to come see me or any one of the other counselors here. So we really appreciate your being here today, and please take a minute and fill out our survey for us. Do either of you have any other questions? If you have friends that you think, man, you guys should have come to this panel, the panel will be recorded and the recordings will be available to anybody else who you think would benefit from seeing it. We'll also have it like on our website and in Handshake. So thank you all for being here. And I want to especially thank our panelists. You all did great. And you reminded me of why I'm in love with nonprofits too. I began my career working with unhomed people. And then I worked with people who were dealing with different kinds of disabilities and self-advocacy. So kind of come out of the same field and love helping other people get into it. So thank you so much for being here. Okay, thank you all. And let's thank our behind the scenes angel, Cara. Thanks for being there with your support, Cara. Thanks. Thank you all. Good.